Welcome back to Pack Mentality. And if this podcast ever got you fired up or gets you fired up or it gave you something useful, do me a huge favor, share it with a friend, send it to your training partner, post it on your story, whatever you got to do. Word of mouth is the only way this podcast grows. And your share might be exactly what someone else needs to get serious about their fitness journey. And today I'm going to be talking about your fatigue profile, or specifically why you keep gassing out. And it's a fatigue strategy that not many people know about. So this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about what most athletes get wrong when it comes to identifying your fatigue profile. We're going to go over the 3 different types of fatigue profiles, why fatigue awareness is a superpower, and how to build fatigue awareness. And there's 5 steps specifically in that subcategory that I'll be going over with you. So fatigue isn't random. It's very predictable. It's beatable. And most CrossFitters, they actually don't lack effort. They actually lack awareness. And elite athletes and the best out there, they don't win by going harder like most people think. They win by knowing when to push and when to hold. And this is probably the most important thing that I learned as a competitive CrossFitter. But this will definitely apply to you, even if you're just doing a normal CrossFit workout, because this will keep you not only from getting burned out in the workout for the short term, but also long term as well. Because if you pace it appropriately, you're not going to get as banged up, and you'll actually feel better post-workout and for the rest of the week. And on top of that, you'll be able to handle more volume, more intensity, because you'll know exactly how to pace things. It's usually when people get burned out at CrossFit is when they just go too hard all the time, and they just build up all the CNS fatigue and the muscle fatigue, and then their joints start hurting, and the muscles are sore all the time. It's just because that part of it is an organic adaptation, but another part of it really is just learning how to pace appropriately to where you get maximize the most returns from your workout itself. And what most athletes get wrong is, a lot of times what we do is we obsess over weight, we obsess over reps, we obsess over the time, but we never really stop to ask and be like, will this break me? And what we do is we misjudge fatigue. And once you're cooked by minute 5, cooked, isn't that what the kids are saying these days? Once you're cooked by minute 5, then boom, things happen. And this specifically happened to me when I learned this the hard way. When I did my very first competition. So my first competition was 2010 CrossFit Games sectionals. Yes, this is 1 year before the CrossFit Games Open premiered. So what they had, what the format was back then, this is 2010. So after the 2009 games, I think they just had regionals, and then you went to the games, and regionals was just open registration back then. 2010, they implemented another qualifying layer, which was sectionals, and sectionals was an in-person competition, a lot of people. And then if you qualify, if you're like top, I don't know, maybe 40 or 30, I can't remember, then you moved on to regionals. And if you were top whatever in regionals, then you move on to the games. And so I registered for sectionals. The very first event was like this event at UCLA in the stadium. It was at the track, and there was a lot of stairs. I had to carry a 45-pound plate with me up and down the stairs and do squats with the plate on my back. I had to do 135-pound thrusters. I had to do wall balls to an 11-foot target. Oh, good God, that was terrible, and my legs weren't as strong back then. We had to do double unders with a beater rope. We had to do burpees. We had to do a bunch of different things. It was like the very first workout with this huge opening chipper, okay? And then, of course, classic me, only 3 years into CrossFit, I go out super hot, just like any other CrossFitter in the world. No one knew how to pace back then, really. And of course, I blow up. I was actually winning my heat by a lot. Like, I think going into the last movement, I was in the lead, and then I got passed by like 5 people because I couldn't do double unders back then or do them very well. So, but part of the reason was I built up so much fatigue in the earlier stages of doing the thrusters, the wall balls, the burpees, the squats, going up and down the stadium, that, I had nothing left. And I was pretty much doing desperate reps, even from my movement before the double unders. And I just got absolutely plowed over. Like, I just got ran over. Like, I was dying. Like, I ran over the finish line, just collapsed. I could barely sprint to the end of the finish line as well. So that's my story from my very first competition, 2010 CrossFit Games sectionals. The very next year, definitely a lot different. Made it past the Open, and then went on to compete for my first time in regionals, and then kept going from there. And then once I hired my coach Mike Lee, He, at the time, also coached high-level games athletes. So one of the biggest athletes he coached at the time was Marcus Philly. Marcus Philly is now a big-time Instagram influencer. He's kind of exited the CrossFit space, but he was a very big-time CrossFit Games competitor. And that's where I learned how to pace, and where I learned the fatigue profile and when to back off, and learned about reps and reserve. So reps and reserve is just a fancy term for like you just stop like 2 to 3 reps before you know that you're going to start getting sticky reps or tough reps. And once I learned that, I was like, oh, wow, like not only am I getting further in the workout, not only am I moving faster, but, I'm not blowing up early. I'm not just standing there looking at nothing. So that's a really important thing when it comes to actually maximizing your workout. And so fatigue patterns follow a certain flow. Okay. So either the muscles are going to blow up early, which means you went out too hot. And that's exactly what happened to me. Actually, I probably got a combination of all these when my first competition. The gas tank crashes late. So you mismanage energy. So essentially you're just breathing so hard that you can't even really function, and you're just kind of walking around doing nothing, or you're just hands on the knees, like just trying to recover, even though your muscles might feel good. Might be a combination of both. It's probably a combination of both. Or your grip dies before the lungs, like you didn't plan for your limiter. And so these could really be anything. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to bore you with those details. And your limiter really isn't the clock. It's your fatigue profile is what determines your score, essentially. And these are the 3 fatigue profiles that really matter. And then we need to stop lumping all fatigue together because they're not all the same. So we have systemic fatigue, we have local muscular fatigue, and we have CNS drain. So systemic is breathing, so long workouts and heart rate. Okay, so these are something that can be addressed organically through adding in more aerobic work, intervals, just working on your breathing patterns in general. But, I think we've all been there. Unless you're an endurance athlete, that, the heavy breathing can be pretty tough at times. And that could be your limiter because you just end up standing there and you have to breathe and you have to recover. We have local muscular. So this is very common when it comes to things like handstand push-ups, anything like maybe high rep pull-ups, muscle ups, whatever. The muscles blow up, the grip, the shoulders. And there's specific muscle groups. And again, we can fix that through organic muscle fatigue, organic adaptation by adding in more either bodybuilding style work to where we're doing higher reps to get better muscle endurance for those local muscles, or we just add in more volume specifically for that muscle group. Also, if it's kind of a combination of strength and endurance, that's when we can add in more strict work like strict handstand push-ups, strict press. It could be something like handstand walks or wall walks. Again, that's where we add in volume for the shoulders and the midline as well. And then we also have CNS drain. Okay, so this is where they comes into play for a heavy workout or a heavy Metcon, which is coordination, balance, and timing will vanish. And this is what happens when you're just not strong enough. And this is where we just got to add in more, heavy singles. Just we got to work on that front end strength of that 3 to 5 rep range, going all the way down to the 1 to 3 rep range to get you stronger and lifting 90% plus. So essentially, like for me personally, like I failed handstand push-ups also in that same competition. Same thing. I was in the lead, or actually I started behind, past everyone because I paced better. But then on the last round of handstand push-ups, I blew up my shoulders because I went unbroken and I just imploded because that one I actually did pace really well. It's just that I just didn't have the muscle endurance yet in order to sustain that to where I could actually win that event. And yeah, it's looking back on that, I'm still butthurt about that. But it's definitely something that I learned the hard way. And I'm really glad I learned those lessons early on. And sometimes it's really easy to look at failure or to look at things going sideways and getting all disappointed and butthurt and sad about yourself and thinking that you suck. But without that first competition and doing so poorly, I wouldn't have been so determined to actually fix these problems in the first place. If I would have done well, I would have been like, oh, I'm so good, I don't need to work on anything. And there's been times where I have been like that. So it's definitely humbling, but it is definitely worth it to kind of get slapped in the face every once in a while. And it's just a matter of how you take it. And so this is why fatigue awareness is a superpower, is because we can predict fatigue, we can control your effort, and we can outperform fitter athletes. And this is really true because just because you're a fitter athlete doesn't mean you know how to pace appropriately. And there's a great saying that that my coach also told me too, is that CrossFit, at the end of the day, the events is always going to reward the pacer. And it's very true, because if you know exactly how to pace a workout, you have a huge advantage over people who don't, because not only are you going to maximize the time it takes to finish the workout or get the best score, you're also going to recover better between events, because you maximized your time and you did what you could within that time frame in order to stave off fatigue for as long as possible. And the less you blow up, the less you're fighting or you're getting desperate reps. As soon as you hit failure and go in desperate reps, that's also very taxing on your nervous system and your muscles in general. So that's going to affect the next event. It's going to affect the next day, even if you're just a normal day CrossFitter. And this isn't about pacing by feel. It's actually math. So this is something we can actually break down. And knowing your breaking point, this will give you confidence and remove all the guesswork. So this advantages here is that you're going to execute, and you're not just going to survive workouts. And you're going to push when it counts, and you're going to suffer less and score more. So here's exactly the 5-step plan on how to build fatigue awareness. So number 1, you have to spot the weak links. So what fails first? Grip, lungs, shoulders, or your brain? Essentially, when we're saying your brain, we're not saying you're stupid. We're just saying that could be your nervous system, right? That, like heavy cleans or heavy snatches, you're missing snatches forward because you're under fatigue. Okay, that's a nervous system problem. And what I always like to say is I like to identify the weakness of my weakness. So, for example, I know currently handstand push-ups are still a struggle, but for me, it's not the lockout. It's specifically that the end range of motion where I'm like 2 to 3 inches off the mat and the first 2 to 3 inches coming up. So I isolate that area specifically, and I'm doing like 10 sets of 10 of like these pulse, like partial reps of kind of going, not locking out my elbows fully, but coming down and doing a deficit, working on that specific weakness of my weakness in order to train to get stronger. And it is working very well. Same thing with like grip, like what specifically on the grip is it hanging from the pull-up bar grip? Or is it carrying things grip? So because there's a difference, because we can train it by either hanging from a pull-up bar, which is a little bit different than doing something like a farmer walk or doing a barbell. And then number 2 is we need to know the timeline. So early red line is a huge mistake. Middle we can manage, and the final 3 minutes is the push. So if you're someone who blows up, an easy strategy to figuring out what your timeline is to seriously start off at an easier pace. And I know this is going to be really difficult for you because we're CrossFitters, and it's either go out guns a-blazing like John Wick or die, like whatever. But what you want to do is you want to go at about 80% effort, okay? And then from there, you actually want to slowly ramp it up to where maybe the final, depending on the workout and the movements and how long it is, but the final maybe 1 to 3 minutes, that's where you go all out and then you finish it. So you want to save a little bit at the end. Think of it like you want to save some reserve, have some reserve in the tank for the last 3 minutes to where you can try and pass everyone. And then guess what? If you overpace at the beginning, that's fine. Now we learned and we know that we can go out a little bit more aggressively the next time we do it. And then the only way you're going to know that is to try it, okay? So I know that you want to win the class workout. I know you want to win your training, but at the end of the day, that's not training. Training is learning how to get better. Think of it like anything else that if you played sports, if you went and you practiced, or you practice anything, you slow down, you isolate things, like if you learn to play the guitar, you learn the chords, you just don't go out and play songs every day, right? You get better by isolating specific things and practicing them. And then from there, in step 3 is we can reverse engineer your pacing. So you don't want to pace off how you feel. You want to pace off how you'll feel later, okay? Because everyone feels good when the workout starts. You know why? Because you are fresh. I know, I can't believe I have to say this, but yes, everyone's going to feel good, okay? And one thing here is that you can track, one way you can reverse engineer your pacing here is by tracking your splits. So if you have a watch, or you can look at the clock, but it's a lot easier if you have a watch, specifically a watch that can track splits. It's partially the reason why I wear a Garmin. Is because I can track my splits. So when I track my splits, I'm looking for one major thing, and that's simply to see, what's my attrition rate, or how many seconds am I gaining per round? So if it takes me 2 minutes on my first round when I'm the freshest, and it takes me 6 minutes on my last round, I definitely need to slow down on the upfront, okay? Now, let's say I kind of have like this varied intensity. Let's say I go 2 minutes, 2.5, 3, and then like 2:15 and then 2. That's actually not too bad. But again, gives me feedback on where I'm kind of fatiguing. And then I can look at those split times. Excuse me, I coughed. And I can look at those split times and identify, okay, so this is my slowest round. What specifically was holding me back on that round, so that way I can work on it. So it could be my breathing, could be my grip, could be my CNS, could be localized muscle fatigue. Who knows? But that will give me an idea of what to actually work on when I can have some data to back it up. Now, on step 4, we want to map out every workout. So after workouts, I do recommend that you log. So where did I fall apart? Just like what I said. What kind of fatigue specifically that I have, and what patterns show my limiter. So that's another thing, that when you map every workout, you'll start to see patterns. And when you take down notes, you're like, okay, well, here, this is the spot where I specifically am having muscle fatigue in my shoulders or my grip. And I'm just, this seems to be a reoccurring thing. So if it's a reoccurring thing, we know what it is, we can identify it, and we can fix the problem. And then step 5, obviously, is a pretty obvious one. We have to train it directly. So if it's your lungs, we add in more zone 2 and interval training. If it's grip, we do add in carries, holds, strict gymnastics, or localized muscle fatigue. It will fall in that same category. Or if it's your central nervous system, we do sprint rest intervals with full recoveries. We do complex skills under fatigue, or we just build up more front end strength. So in the 1 to 5 rep range, essentially. So there's a ton of other things I could go over. I'll probably save that for another podcast. So there are a few things that I want to talk about before we wrap things up here. But there's planned breaks versus panic breaks. So on there is that it's always better to have somewhat of a game plan before going in. And I like using descending sets. Okay, so if it's a 21, 15, 9 workout, maybe I'll go like 11, 5, 3. And then like 4. I don't know. My math doesn't add up. It's whatever. But I like using descending sets for that. That's just me personally. Again, so that you can break it up into like sets of 5, sets of 6. Doesn't matter. But I like using a bigger set when I'm fresh, and I gradually do lower and lower sets. And my sets, and don't be afraid to pivot and change sets in the middle of a workout. And also, the worst round equals your real score. So going back to what I'm talking about splits, is that you have to just look at your worst round of the workout or the slowest round, identify what went wrong there and what you can do to specifically fix it. So, and then finally, never pace off feeling good early. That's definitely a trap, because like I said earlier, you're always going to feel good up front. Save some. My challenge to you is to actually go halfway through the workout at about 80%. And if you feel good, start pushing. But you have to start going off a little bit slower and identifying what that is. And then another good strategy that I had that my coach gave me too was to specifically start off slow. And I was actually required to increase my pace every set. So that actually really taught me on where the workout really started to hurt and where it really started to fall off as well. So it gave me, again, a lot of feedback on there. So wrapping things up here is that your fatigue is not a mystery. It's a map, and start using it. Stop guessing, and you'll be able to start maximizing your workouts in less time, or you'll be able to start maximizing your workouts at a much better rate. So again, if this was helpful, do me a favor, leave me an honest review, and don't forget to follow us on social media at Red Wolf CrossFit, and DM your content suggestions there. Love to hear from you. Until next time, good luck, have fun, and nailed it.